Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome on stage Shashi Tharoor, Mr. TCA Raghavan, Hindol Sengupta, Neeraj Kumar, our moderator for this evening, Rishi Suri, and surprise for you all, Taslima Nasreen. So while they're coming on stage, I would like to quickly introduce everyone that there are, as you see, several speakers, so it will take a couple of minutes. Please bear with me. The session this evening is called Pakistan is in the Eye of the Beholder. So the idea being that Pakistan is whatever you make of it, whichever way you look at it. And the participants are, the person who is not here is Mr. Hussein Haqqani. He has thankfully sent a video. Hussein did not get a visa. The fault is not with the government, I'd like to clarify, because there has been strange reports in the media. He applied too late for the visa. He sent a video, as you'll hear in the video. But just to quickly introduce everyone, Hussein, whose video will play in a moment, is Pakistan's former ambassador to the US, now a director at the Hudson Institute, Washington. He's the author of a book called Magnificent Delusions, which is about Pakistan's relations with the US. And about 10 years ago, he wrote a classic study of the relationship between the army and the religious segments in Pakistan, which is called Pakistan Between Mosque and Military. We have just published an updated and revised version of that book, and that's available here for sale, along with the books of all our other participants. Shashi Tharoor does not need an introduction, but privilege always to introduce him. Shashi, as you know, had a 3-decade-long career at the United Nations. He is now a member of parliament from Thiruvananthapuram. He is well known as a public intellectual and as a writer, both of fiction and non-fiction. Among his books, I think what is relevant for this evening is his book called Pax Indica, which is a study of India's foreign policy. Mr. TCA Raghavan, real pleasure to have you here, sir. He has just retired from the Indian Foreign Service, and his last posting from 2013 to end of 2015, he was India's High Commissioner in Pakistan. Taslima Nasreen, we were not able to announce her participation in advance because of security reasons, as you will understand, but a real pleasure to have you here. Taslima, as you know, is an award-winning writer and a human rights activist, known for her powerful writings on the oppression of women and religious fanaticism. Born in Bangladesh, she has lived in exile since 1994. And we at Penguin Random House have published, a long time back, we published her novel called Lajja and another novel called French Lover. And very glad to announce that later this year we are publishing Exile, which is the 7th part of her autobiography and particularly relevant this evening. Hindol Sengupta, award-winning journalist and writer. Again, his latest book, Being Hindu, was published in November by Penguin Random House. Mr. Neeraj Kumar, former Commissioner of Police, Delhi. Many of you will know him. He retired from the IPS in 2013, and last year we published his book, Dial D for Dawn, Inside Stories of CBI Case Missions. Finally, moderating the session this evening, Rishi Suri, real pleasure to have him. Rishi is senior editor covering international affairs at the Daily Milap. I don't know how many of you know of the Daily Milap. This is India's oldest and largest circulated Urdu daily. And Rishi will be moderating the evening. Sorry, that's a very long introduction, but won't keep you any longer. Over to you, Rishi.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, then. It's indeed a privilege being here today moderating what promises to be a fascinating session on Pakistan, and is very aptly titled Pakistan is in the Eye of the Beholder. 1 billion plus people in India, probably 1 billion plus views on Pakistan, and I think today's conversation might just give us a snapshot into a few of those. We have an amazing panel of speakers from varied backgrounds, each extremely accomplished on their own. Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Ambassador Raghavan, Neeraj Kumarji, Taslima Nasreen ji, and of course Hindol Sen Gupta. It's truly an honor sharing the stage with you all. Unfortunately, as Udain mentioned, Hussain Haqqani ji could not make it. Could we play his video to start the conversation off?
Greetings to everyone at Spring Fever. It's a pleasure talking to you all. It would have been a greater pleasure to be there, but this time I was a little late in applying for my visa. All fault is mine, nobody else's. It takes a little while for a Pakistani to get a visa to India. As you know, that I have for a long time argued that given the similarities between our two countries, we need to have freer travel than we do. I guess these are the kind of moments when we are able to make that point with a little more vehemence. I'm grateful to Penguin for having published Pakistan between Mosque and Military, updated up to 2015, which is now, I believe, available there, and I look forward to all of you buying it and reading it. As for the panel that I was invited to, which is Pakistan is in the Eye of the Beholder, I would just say that it's important to understand that every country is only in the eye of the beholder. Most people consider their own country very important. Pakistan is unique because it's a relatively new country. Next year, in 2017, it will complete 70 years of existence. But there are other countries that did not exist until somebody decided that they needed to exist. So, for example, Belgium came about in 1830. There was no Belgium in history as at least a sovereign or independent country. Now, in the subcontinent, it's very important to most of us because of the great debate that took place before the creation of Pakistan. There were people on both sides of the argument. One argument prevailed, but it was not necessarily the argument of the majority, not even of the Muslims. As I show in my book, the 1946 election on the basis of which the British government decided to partition the subcontinent was not an election held on the basis of adult franchise. So not all Muslims who voted for the Muslim League accounted for an overwhelming majority of the Muslim population of the subcontinent. Only 15% were actually eligible to vote, and only a little more than half of them voted. The Muslim League won. The British decided at that time to effect partition. Now Pakistan is a reality, and 70 years later, let me say that there are people like me who have known no other nationality. I was born a Pakistani, I am still a Pakistani. In fact, today Pakistan's population has a median age of about 22. So almost 100 million people in Pakistan are below the age of 22. And then if you see the Pakistani demographic and population profile, you will realize that hardly 6 or 7% are people who would have been old enough at the time of partition to actually have any memory of partition. What we have to figure out is how Pakistan can live at peace with itself and with its neighbors. I think that it's time to just, of course, there will be a historian's argument, and that should always take place. Historians, I think, sometimes still discuss what happened in Rome or what happened in Carthage. That argument does not go away. But I think it's more important to come to terms with the argument of how does Pakistan make progress, how does Pakistan find peace with itself, and how does Pakistan actually find a modus vivendi with India, which is its most important and largest neighbor. That is where all the issues about how Pakistan is viewed in the world stem from. Pakistan's turn to militarism and by extension to militancy is all a product of the difficult relationship between Pakistan and India. I, in my book, have argued that I use the symbolic terms of mosque and military primarily to make the point that religion and the religious establishment in Pakistan, which was very weak in the beginning but is now very strong, and the military establishment are the ones who have shaped an idea of Pakistan. But the people of Pakistan are just like the people of all their neighboring countries. In fact, we have very talented people in most fields. We have talent that is waiting even to be explored. So when people say Pakistan is in the eye of the beholder, what they really mean is that you can see Pakistan of the artists, you can see Pakistan of the poets, you can see Pakistan of the creative elements of society, you can see Pakistan of the small embattled liberals, you can see Pakistan of the landed aristocracy, and you can see Pakistan of the establishment. They are all Pakistan. Now what Pakistanis need to understand, and I as a Pakistani always make this argument to my country folk, is that most people around the world, when they are critical of Pakistan's state policies, they are not denigrating the people of Pakistan. In fact, even those who question the creation of Pakistan are questioning the political argument. They are not questioning the right of the people of Pakistan to live in peace, to find to express their creativity, to find prosperity and happiness. So if Pakistan can overcome the baggage of partition that has manifested in the form of militarism and militancy, the baggage of partition that has translated into endless debates about Pakistan's raison d'etre. Most nations don't discuss why are we here, what is our raison d'etre, but Pakistan has that debate that has gone on and raged on for years. It has been a debilitating debate. It actually divided the country considerably, and we lost East Pakistan, which ended up becoming Bangladesh because of that. So if Pakistan can be a geographic, territorial state that says we will recognize our own diversity, and it becomes a pluralist modern state that does not insist on an ideology, doesn't seek conformity from its own citizens on what they believe, then I think that much of what we hear about Pakistan will no longer be about terrorism and militancy and extremism, but it will be about the wonderful Pakistani young people who are just waiting to have their potential unleashed in every way, from the economic realm to the creative. I am one of those who believes that the key to that will be in our close and friendly relationship with our much larger neighbor, India. In 1948, somebody who was actually my namesake, Hussain Shahid Sohrawardi, who was the great Bengali leader, the former Chief Minister of Undivided Bengal and later Prime Minister of Pakistan, he had said that the future, and this was in May 1948, and he said that Pakistan will not prosper if the leaders of Pakistan try to run it on the basis of fear. Just as the creation of Pakistan owed itself to the fear that Islam is in danger, Pakistan should not be run on the basis of the slogan of Pakistan in danger. Instead of believing in the notion of the nation being perennially in danger, Pakistan should ensure that it has close ties to the countries with which the land that is Pakistan has had historic ties. I hope that day will come someday soon. So thank you all for listening to me. Thanks for the technology that enables us to be connected. Thank you, Penguin, for publishing Pakistan Between Mosque and Military. And thank you all who intend to read it or have already purchased the book to read it. Thank you.
I think the Pakistani perspective by Mr. Haqqani really sets the tone for the rest of the conversation.
Rishi, I'm sorry to interrupt just for a minute. Very large audience here today, which is excellent. Just wanted to say, some of you will be tweeting. So if you are tweeting, if you could tweet with hashtag SpringFever2016, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Now on to our panelists. If I could start with Shashiji. Shashiji, in your years at the UN and then, of course, as part of the government and now the opposition, give you this one. What are your thoughts on Pakistan?
Right. I'm afraid you can't mention the UN in this context because the UN is a place where we all flourish as doves, and I'm a dove who's been mugged by reality, as it were. So I kind of, when you speak of Pakistan in the eyes of the beholder, I tend to behold Pakistan with the heart of a dove, but the head of a hawk. And the reason for that, quite simply, is our own experience with relation to Pakistan. And while I don't disagree with anything that my good friend Hussain Haqqani has said, I've known him for a long time, and I think when he speaks of the Pakistan of the poet and the creative writer and the idealistic young person, I'm sure all that is as true. But the Pakistan that I behold from where I sit is Pakistan as it impacts upon India. And there it seems to me that we have some really fundamental issues. First of all, there is the core problem, which in my view is not Kashmir. I think the real problem between us and Pakistan is the nature of the Pakistani state. It is a state which, to paraphrase Voltaire on Prussia, in India the state has an army, in Pakistan the army has a state. And what that boils down to is that whereas in India you join the army to defend the country, in Pakistan you join the army to run the country. They have run the country for 33 years of the 70 that Hussain mentioned, and the rest of the other 37, they have run it from behind a civilian government, making very clear how far that government can go, what the red lines are, pulling the strings as appropriate, and throwing out the governments in question when they dared to go beyond what the military found acceptable. On top of that, the military is present, as Ayesha Siddiqa has demonstrated in her book, not just in the military establishment or when they're ruling in the government establishment. The military is involved in everything. It's involved in real estate, it's involved in import, export, it runs petrol stations, universities, think tanks. They're present in all walks of life, and it's a cradle to the grave profession. Once you get into the army, essentially, once you reach a position of any consequence, you don't really need to retire unless you want to. You can continue doing things that the military assures for you. And that kind of dominance has meant that Pakistan is now the country whose army has the single largest share of GDP of any country in the world. There is no country in the world whose army disposes of a larger percentage of either the government's budget or of its gross domestic product. Now, how does the Pakistani military get away with justifying this disproportionate command of its nation's resources? It can only do so by pointing to trouble on its frontiers, ideally on both, or at least complete quiescence on one side and hostility on the other, so that they have a justification for allowing the military to dominate their society. In these circumstances, we're looking at a situation where whenever India has attempted with as much sincerity as one can muster to make peace, it has always been met with a military response by the military who stands to lose from that peace. So we talk to a civilian government. The civilian government may sometimes be genuinely anxious to move ahead with peace. And then so Mr. Vajpayee makes his bus trip to Lahore. There's 3 months of talk about the spirit of Lahore. And meanwhile, of course, the Pakistani soldiers, not dressed in military uniform, cross into the heights of Kargil, and you know the rest. Or the subsequent peacemaking efforts, Agra was followed by, a few months later, by the attack on our parliament, etc., etc. We can have example after example. When Zardari comes to power and he makes very conciliatory noises, we in turn reciprocate. Their foreign minister is in Delhi to actually discuss visa liberalization. So someone like Hussain Haqqani could have been here more quickly had that worked. But while the foreign minister is in Delhi, 26/11 happens in Mumbai. So that is the situation. We are stuck with talking to a civilian government that is either unable or unwilling to give us the peace we need. And that's the other problem we have, because in the subcontinent, part of the difficulty in our equation is we are a status quo power. There is nothing Pakistan has that we really want. Yes, we do maintain a claim to Pakistan, so-called Azad Kashmir, Pakistan occupied Kashmir as we call it. But my own view is that we maintain that claim essentially in order to have something to give up in a settlement. We are not realistically going to try and claim that back. Indeed, when we actually won some territory in 65, that is territory that belongs on our maps to us. We still gave it back in the Tashkent peace settlement in January 66. So the fact is, this is not a part of Kashmir we realistically are aiming to get back. Therefore, we can truthfully say there's nothing we want from Pakistan except peace. Whereas Pakistan does want something we have, and they have this long-standing claim to the Valley of Kashmir as something they consider the unfinished business of partition. And as long as they have that chip on their shoulder, and as long as they have all the other historical baggage, they will continue doing what they've been doing, which is trying first through conventional warfare and failing, and then trying through militants, terrorists, and other proxies to divide India. There are accounts of how they first thought they could do to India through Punjab, through the Khalistan movement, what we had done to them as they saw it with Bangladesh. When that failed, Kashmir was the next opportunity, and they started sending people across. Today, the Pakistanis have a somewhat more innocent narrative of saying, look, how can you accuse us of being terrorists when we are the biggest victims of terrorism? Yes, but the problem is that those terrorists are homegrown. It's their own chickens coming home to roost. The terrorists whom they have armed, financed, guided, encouraged, unleashed on the hapless Afghans, because after all the Taliban was a wholly owned subsidiary of the Pakistani ISI, that they continue to send to us, as we know from the chilling evidence we've heard of 2611 being commanded while it was happening by a handler from Pakistan. All of that evidence is available to us and to the rest of the world, and yet we have this innocence being proclaimed by Pakistan. I'm sorry, it just won't wash. There is no moral equivalence. Yes, sorry, more Pakistanis are dying because of terrorism than Indians are anymore in any particular year in the last few years. But those people are not dying because of people armed, trained, officered, paid for, supplied from India and sent across to Pakistan. They are a homegrown problem, whereas we sadly are losing citizens to terrorists and militants sent from across their border. So there's a fundamental problem. I'm sorry I've taken so long in laying out the diagnosis. What's a prescription? I am not one of those candlelights at Wagah who says we must aim for the better angels of our nature and theirs, because those better angels definitely exist in Pakistan. There are lots of wonderful Pakistanis whom we can all meet with, interact with, etc. But they don't tend to call the shots unless they somehow miraculously get into the military. So we can't do what my friend Manish Hankaraya would want and say, let's have uninterrupted and uninterruptible talks, because if the military and the ISI do unleash the Lashkar-e-Toiba on Mumbai again or another Indian city, we should interrupt talks. We can't talk to people when their own nationals, uncontrolled by them, are blowing up bombs in our country or killing Indians. But what we can do is to try and change the stakes in Pakistan. And the way to do that, it seems to me, is by dramatically opening up people-to-people contact. Let's be unilaterally generous in visas, for example, starting off with specified categories of people. The Hussain Haqqanis of the world, writers, artists, diplomats, business people, even business people working for military-run companies. Let's give them a chance to come here, because I've never yet met a Pakistani who's come to India and not fallen in love with the place. They love to be here. They're always, they have the shock of recognition and the dismay of seeing how much more open and exciting and interesting and creative the society is. They want contact with it. Let's not deny it to them. Let them come. The more come, the more care for India. Perhaps the larger will be the constituency for good relations with India. Secondly, let's massively open up on trade as well. The Pakistanis in many ways are the biggest victims of their own negative trade policies in India. I would even encourage military-owned companies to trade with India. The more Pakistani companies, business people, elite institutions there have a stake in good relations with India because they're profiting from it, the less happy they will be if their military fails to rein in the Lashkar-e-Toiba attacks of the future. I know this may sound sort of either naive or nibbling away at the margins, but I'm not sure there's a better solution. I don't think permanent hostility is a policy. It's a mood, not a policy. And I don't think that this uninterrupted and uninterruptible talks make sense, because then you actually surrender your own self-respect by saying we'll talk to you even if your people are coming in and humiliating us and killing us and harming us. So neither policy that we've tried so far can stand by itself. Let us instead, it seems to me, open up the people-to-people contact, try and enlarge the constituency in Pakistan for good relations with India, try and improve the stakes there. And yes, with the World Cup going on, let's play more cricket with them. I think it actually does help change the atmosphere for relations between us. Thank you.
Strong points there, Shashiji. And I think if we work on those 3-4 points immediately, that would do a lot of good. Ambassador Raghavan, you've spent a number of years in Pakistan. Till last year, you were the Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan. What are your thoughts on Pakistan today?
Well, following Sashi is always a very, very hard act to follow. It's a very compelling argument he has laid out. But if you think about it, he began as a hawk and ended up with very dovish solutions. And when you reflect on hawks and doves, you realize that most of the time they're saying the same thing. And they also have a common position. Yeah, sorry. So most hawks and doves really are saying the same thing. Because when you reflect on what they're saying, they both seem to assume that by following a certain set of policies, you can bring about a change in the state of Pakistan. I think we really underestimate, because of our own size, what Pakistan is about. It's a country of 200 million people, as Hussain Haqqani said. It's also a people with a very strong sense of themselves, and a sense of themselves as a nation and as a country. Whatever change is going to come about is largely not going to be because of external factors or because of India. It's going to come across by what they do themselves and how they imagine their future. So I think this is a caution which one should always bear in mind, because there are all kinds of solutions which are given by hawks and doves. And as we heard Sashi, really the number of options that we have are not so many. But whether you dialogue or don't dialogue, whether it is interrupted or uninterruptible, the point really is that we have to remain engaged with Pakistan. Just like France cannot cut itself off from what is happening across the Mediterranean in Iraq or Libya or in Syria, just like Turkey cannot cut itself off from what is happening in Syria and Iraq. Similarly, no matter how much we harden our defenses and whatever other means we take, we cannot disengage ourselves from what is happening in Pakistan. So whatever means you follow to pursue that path of engagement, the fact is you have to remain engaged. There is a third point which really struck me after hearing Mr. Haqqani when he spoke a great deal about 1947. But when you reflect on it, in fact, many of the issues we face are far more contemporary than 1947. If you think about it, this is something which is a favorite theory of mine. 1979 really is the year in which the India-Pakistan balance tipped in many ways. What happened in 1979? It was the year of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. It was the year of the Iranian, of the Shia revolution in Iran. It was also the year in which democracy in Pakistan suffered a decisive setback with the execution of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. And of course, there were a number of other factors. It was also, incidentally, the year, in case you're interested, that the Karakoram highway from China to Pakistan was formally inaugurated. So I think we need not go deep into our history to find a cause for our contemporary issues. Many of them are very contemporary, and we really have to see as to how Pakistan reassesses its India policies and its Pakistan and its Afghanistan policies, because these are really the cause of what Sashi said, is as to how it has been a victim of terrorism in the last 7-8 years. In fact, if you look at the history of Pakistan between 2007 and 2014, for many Pakistanis, it was possibly the most traumatic period in their country's existence, if you exclude the 1971 crisis when East Pakistan separated. Really, if you see what they went through between 2007 and 2014, they lost their most important charismatic political leader. There was hardly anything in Pakistan which remained safe, whether it was military installations, whether it was civilian targets, whether it was religious shrines, hospitals, etc., etc. So really, it is, as I said, for Pakistan to reassess where its external policies vis-a-vis India and Pakistan are taking it to. And that is a determination which the Pakistanis themselves have to make. There is no way by giving more visas or by trading more or by giving certain economic concessions that you can influence that internal discussion in any meaningful way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. When we often talk about Pakistan, when we have so many discussions about Pakistan, we tend to forget the erstwhile East Pakistan. Now, we have Taslima ji here today, and I would request her to spend a couple of minutes talking about her memories growing up in East Pakistan, and of course, her thoughts on Pakistan as well.
Thank you. I remember in 1971 war. At that time, I was 9 years old. I encountered Pakistani people when I was 9. Pakistani army entered our house. They looted our money and gold, whatever we had. You know, they tied my father to a coconut tree in a courtyard, and they tortured my father with their bayonets. My father was almost killed. My mother was reading the Quran, and when she heard that Pakistani army entered our house, she ran. She disappeared, to an abandoned house next door. And my grandmother also. My grandmother had a blue basket. She was praying. But when she heard that Pakistani army entered our house, she also ran. She also, with my mother, disappeared to another next door. But I was little. I was sleeping on a bed. My little sister was sleeping also. But she was sleeping, but I was pretending to be asleep. I heard the sound of heavy boots entered the room where I was sleeping. They had torchlights. They flashed on my face. I was so scared. They probably flashed on my chest and thighs. I was pretending to be asleep because I feared that if, I thought that they would take me by force to their camp. And I heard that they rape women in their camps. So I thought I would be taken by force to their camps and they would rape me for months, and then I would have committed suicide like many other women in our country. But probably because that I didn't develop breasts, or I was not older than what I was, they didn't take me to their camps. My mother left her gold bracelets on the Quran that she was reading when Pakistani army came to our house. They looted all our gold and money, and even those gold bracelets they took from the Quran. They broke our cupboards and took all the golds and valuable things. And my grandmother had blue basket, what she forgot to actually take when she ran away. In that basket, many neighbors of my grandmother and also the whole family of my grandmother gave their ornaments for safekeeping. And they looted our house and they left. My father was survived. And I have seen actually in the villages how Pakistani army burned villages after villages. And then we learned that Pakistani army killed 3 million Bengali people and raped 200,000 women. I grew up in Bangladesh as a rationalist, secularist, and a humanist. I had fear of Pakistani people. But in Europe, in North America, I have attended many secular conferences and humanist conferences. There I met many Pakistanis who were like me, secularists, atheists, rationalists, humanists. So they are trying hard to make their country a better place. But you know, if you create a country on the basis of religion, that country most likely would become a fundamentalist country. In Pakistan, I know that women do not have human rights and people do not have much freedom of expression. You know, religion is not compatible with human rights, women's rights, freedom of expression, and democracy. So Pakistan is not yet true democracy. Even though Bangladesh was a secular country when it was born in 1971, but Islamization started since 80s, and now Bangladesh is becoming like a Pakistan. You know, so many atheists and rationalists, progressive intellectual bloggers are getting killed by religious fundamentalists. The government is not taking any action against those killers. You know, Bangladesh war in 1971 war proved that Muslim unity is a myth. It also proved that two-nation theory was a wrong theory. So no country should be created on the basis of religion. So we have seen what happened to Pakistan. So I hope that secularists, rationalists, and humanists and enlightened people in Pakistan will try to make Pakistan a better country.
That was a very moving account, Taslima ji. Thank you. Now, Neeraj Kumar ji, in your experience, can you talk a little bit about the security dimension and your experiences in dealing with Pakistan?
You have heard various perspectives. You have heard the perspective of Ambassador Raghavan, a diplomat. You have heard the views of Shashi, who is far more than a diplomat. And also, we are all honored to hear Taslima ji and her memories of the cruelty unleashed by Pakistani army in Bangladesh. Now, I wish to tell you a policeman's perspective, not an intelligence officer's perspective, but somebody who has investigated several cases where the origin of all the trouble, various terror attacks which all originated where masterminded, conceived and executed from Pakistani soil. And in each one of them, it was conclusively proved that there was the establishment's role, and in most cases I investigated, there was the role of the ISI. Whether it was the serial blasts of 1993 in Mumbai, whether it was the 26/11 attack or the attack on the Indian Parliament, the most audacious terror attack that anyone can conceive of. And not to forget, of course, the attack on Bombay and how it was carried out. In each one of them, we have seen a pattern. There is a running thread between all these attacks. And that running thread is, one, the ultimate goal of hitting at India, and to use a cliche, to bleed India from 1,000 wounds. Why? Because India helped in the creation of Bangladesh. If they could take away Bangladesh from us, East Pakistan from us, we will take away Kashmir from us. So this has always been the target, and the Pakistani intelligence agencies have a very clear-cut role, a clear-cut task to achieve. We, on the other side, we are always reacting. They hit at us and then we make noise and we say this, that, this should be investigated. We stop talks and this and that. But the point is that one incident will surprise you even more than the previous one. If the Red Fort in Delhi could be attacked by people sent from Pakistan, and we thought, oh my God, look at the way they have chosen Red Fort, because it's a symbol. Why was Taj Mahal Hotel in Mumbai chosen? Because it is a symbol. It is Gateway of India is close by. So the clear target is to attack great icons of our country, and to show that nothing is safe from us, whether it is your Red Fort, whether it is your parliament, whether, you name it. And we can reach there. We can reach you by sea, we can reach you by land, and, we all fear that someday the terrorists will descend on us even by air, paragliding, paragliders and so on and so forth. Every Republic Day or every Independence Day, we cater for paragliders, and we have snipers, located, deployed at rooftops, and so on and so forth. So first of all, the task given to the military establishment, as also the intelligence agencies, is to hit at India, and hit at India at iconic places, and to show India in poor light how poor our defense systems are. This is one. The second thing is that they would adopt the most, insidious of strategies. Now, to give you an example, I don't know how many of you recall, there was a conspiracy to hit at, to kill Tarun Tejpal and Anirudh Bahal of Tehelka. Now, the contours of the conspiracy were that since Mr. Bangaru Lakshman had been trapped, the BJP government or the NDA government at the center would be held guilty if Tarun Tejpal and Anirudh Bahal, who were the main pillars of Tehelka then, everyone will think that it has been carried out by the BJP. And therefore, there will be instability in the country, and the NDA, which had a very slim kind of majority, that government will fall because of widespread protests and so on and so forth. In the Bombay bomb blast of 1993, people were taken from here for training. When the Memons went, they changed their identity completely. They were given birth certificates, they were given, passports, they were given identification papers, they were given passports twice actually. And when the pressure on Pakistan began to rise, they moved the Memons from Pakistan to Bangkok. And when the pressure subsided, they moved them back. Now, if you see the pattern in all these events is that first we make a lot of noise, and then slowly the public memory is so short that even Pathankot, the impact of Pathankot has begun to wear off on all of us. The point I'm trying to make is that repeatedly it will keep happening, and repeatedly they will strike from time to time, and they will also strike, again what is common knowledge, at a time when there are attempts to bridge the gap between the people of India and the people of Pakistan, to have peaceful dialogue and so on and so forth. They will hit because they do not want, as Ambassador Raghavan said, and also as Shashi said, that they do not want, the vested interest in Pakistani establishment do not want good citizen-to-citizen relationship between Indians and Pakistanis. If you meet a Pakistani anywhere in the world, I mean, you will find that they are, just like us. Not only to look at, they think like us. They are, but if you begin to scratch a little, I mean, if you mention the word Kashmir, or if you mention the word ISI, then you watch that person, whether he is a government official or whether he is a common citizen, because they have been brainwashed so much by propaganda right from their schools and colleges and so on, that their sentiments towards India will eventually be, anti-Indian. Therefore, I do not know. I would very much like that the steps that Shashi has suggested, soft power and all that should happen, and it should keep happening. We should have exchange of artists. We should have exchange of people, and maybe have more cricket matches and so on. Also, serials. Don't forget that these days everyone is hooked on Zindagi channel. At least my wife is, because that is how I managed to get some time to write my book. So, these things should keep happening. They are crazy. They are absolutely crazy about our movies. We all know that. They watch our movies, and we are equally crazy about their serials, because they are so well made. Their stories are, compared to our Saas Bahu stuff, their serials are outstanding. So all that should go on, but we should never lose sight of the fact that they will not cease from hitting at us, and hitting at us harder and harder till something gives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neeraj. And I think the point is well made. All the ladies in the audience would agree we could always do with more Fawad Khans. Moving on. Hindal, you've extensively traveled to Pakistan. In fact, you're one of the few journalists I know who's really traveled a lot to Pakistan. And you've written about business and trade. What are your thoughts about Pakistan today?
I'm cognizant of two facts today when I sit in this panel. One is I'm the youngest. So in a sense, I represent another generation of Indians engaging with Pakistan, even on this panel today. And the other thing that I'm cognizant of is that I'm one of the few journalists of my generation who's been to Pakistan half a dozen times. Not many people from India, not many journalists, especially of my generation, has actually been to Pakistan that many times. And I was fortunate to do that. The first time I went to Pakistan, incidentally, was on the 14th of August in 2007, which is Pakistan's Independence Day. And it was a rare moment to be on Pakistani soil for the very first time and see, in a sense, as one of my friends in Pakistan would say, see yourself anew. And what a wonderful expression that is, that you begin to see yourself again and again. And when I think of Pakistan, I only think of friends. I only have friends in Pakistan. But what has happened between 2007, the me in 2007, and the me in 2016? I began to realize 3 or 4 things which I want to share. Number one, the friendship between individuals, Pakistanis and Indians, is different from the state called Pakistan. You have to distinguish between individual Pakistanis and the state called Pakistan. And I think often in the Indian discourse, as in the Pakistani discourse, this gets mixed up. And I no longer mix up these two things. I only have friends in Pakistan, but they do not represent the state of Pakistan. That's a big distinction to make. The other thing which changed with my generation is, and I used to work in Bombay, in Bangalore, and so on and so forth. As you go beyond Delhi and you go towards the Vindhyas and you keep going further and further down south, you realize the mood and how people look at Pakistan changes. Because all of us live in Delhi or parts of North India, we have a very different engagement and a different mood about the India-Pakistan story. If you go to Bombay or Bangalore or Chennai or Kerala, you'll realize people look at Pakistan as, well, just another country, and we'll have peace with them if they so wish, and we will have war with them if they so wish. This is not to suggest that I'm advocating war at all, but I'm just saying the mood is different. So I think what has changed in my generation, and at least people like me, is we see only friends in Pakistan, but we're not part of the Aman Ki Asha brigade, right? Because I believe, and I sometimes see that because of a particular generation, a few people who always engage with Pakistan or seen to be engaging in Pakistan, from Aman Ki Asha, it's a very quick, slippery slope to Aman Ki Nasha. And we are all for Aman Ki Asha, but we are not for Aman Ka Nasha. It's an intoxication that at all cost we must have peace. We must have peace. We absolutely must have peace. But what is the price we're willing to pay? And as Shashi said, and I completely agree, we must engage consistently with Pakistan. But if we are consistently attacked, we cannot engage with Pakistan. That's a line we need to draw and understand. Look, I am one of those Indians who's lost two friends of mine in Pakistan who are now dead. The woman who hosted my first talk in Pakistan in 2007, perhaps some of the panelists would also know her, the owner of a wonderful place in Karachi called T2F, called Sabeen Mahmood, is dead. She was shot dead by Islamists in Pakistan because she dared to speak for secularism. Number one. I am the last Indian journalist who interviewed a man called Salman Taseer twice in the course of 1 year. And I had barely returned to India and barely began to file my notes when he was assassinated. In fact, my eternal memory of Salman Taseer is Salman Taseer telling me how in Lahore House, in Lahore, in the house of the governor, which he was at that time in Lahore, the cigarettes that they smoked in Governor House in Lahore was specially rolled. Gold Leaf, the brand, would specially do a rolling only for Governor House Lahore. So there are packets which said Governor House Lahore, and you couldn't buy those cigarettes anywhere else. So he was a flamboyant and interesting man. But the deaths of these two people, and brutally, both of them were brutally murdered, taught me a lesson that Atish Taseer recently mentioned in a piece that he wrote about his father's funeral. I believe his father's killer's funeral. And there he mentioned a very interesting thing, which I think really resonated with me. That even though I believe that Pakistan today there's a rare moment of hope in Pakistan today. Number one, Salman Taseer's killer has been hanged. He has been punished. And number two, for the first time, holidays have been declared. National holidays have been declared for festivities of all religions in Pakistan, which was not true till to now. So there's going to be a holiday in Pakistan, national holiday for Holi, for Diwali, and so on and so forth, for Christmas and so on and so forth, right? For Holi also, from what I heard. Well, it's in proposed. So that's a moment. If it happens, it's a rare moment of hope. But I do not forget that the minority affairs minister who I met in Pakistan had good fortune to interview, and who was a Christian, was later murdered. Again, I mean, three people. He wasn't a friend of mine, but again, the minority affairs minister who had just interviewed, barely weeks after that, he was killed. And again, I think he had spoken against this blasphemy law and so on and so forth. So the point I'm trying to make is, and I'm, a friend of mine in Pakistan and I are at the moment talking about writing a book together to go beyond this whole Aman Ki Asha thing and take a realistic look at relations between the two countries. And I think with my generation in India, there is a real sense, especially if you go away from Delhi, that we need to engage with Pakistan. We need to engage furiously with Pakistan, but there needs to be a line. We must never forget there is a line. And I forget those immortal words of Arun Shourie, who said that we must have the ability as a nation to do to them in Balochistan what they do to us in Kashmir. This is approach we should never forget. We must have that ability. Whether we use it or not, we must have that ability. My last point, I am the only journalist who's written on Pakistani business. Most people write on Pakistani civil society or politics. Fortune magazine in India published a front cover on Mia Muhammad Mansha, which I wrote, who's the biggest businessman in Pakistan. And he's a wonderfully erudite man. And trade is something I genuinely believe can push the dialogue between India and Pakistan. And trade is something we do not focus enough. Business is something we do not focus enough. We must push that agenda further. But finally, my final point is we must have peace. We must have peace at all costs, but we must never lose the ability to do to them what they do to us. Thank you.
Point well made, Hindal. I'm conscious Shashiji has to leave. And thank you so much for your remarks, Shashiji. And I think on behalf of the entire audience, I'd like to thank you once again.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed listening to my fellow panelists. I'm sorry I can't stay for the conversation with two other places to go to. But just to make a couple of comments, if I may, before leaving, other than observing that if you're a Pakistani politician, very clearly, and you don't, you want to survive, don't grant Hindol Sengupta an interview. It's very dangerous. But no, but I thought a lot of sensible points were made all around. I just wanted to comment on my friend Raghavan because he made and he served there most recently, and I'm sure that we have to respect that judgment, that there's nothing we can do that will change the discourse or the stakes within Pakistan. If that is so, then what options do we have? It seems to me that talking by itself is not a solution unless we know what we're talking about and who we're talking to. And not talking is not a solution either, because not talking doesn't get you anywhere. And the problem is we've tried both with futile results. So perhaps it's this need to do something rather than nothing that makes me say, well, this is something that's within our control. It doesn't matter if the Pakistanis don't reciprocate, the pressure will mount on them to reciprocate. But if we can live up to what is best about our own society and our own values as a democracy and as a pluralist society, it seems to me that we should open up. Because at the end of the day, the whole thing would be that if indeed there are attacks, we would of course shut the gates again. But then the number of people who are aggrieved with their own militants and their own ISI and their own military for depriving them of what they've enjoyed with India, that will be larger. And hopefully we can create more and more of a constituency within Pakistan. I concede to Mr. Raghavan the judgment that it may not have that effect. But it seems to me that since nothing else of the available options no one has come up with another prescription, at least here's something we could do that might perhaps have a constructive effect.
Thank you, Shashiji.
May I respond? I didn't mean that we sit on our hands and do nothing. That's not what I meant at all. Neither do I agree with what Hindol just said. Because if you look at what has happened in Pakistan in the last 10 years, and you see the kind of terrorist attacks which they have faced, and you ask most Pakistanis, and I'm sure if you ask your friends too, they'll tell you 100% the Indians have done this. So whether you are doing something in Baluchistan or through Afghanistan or not, it's not important. Everyone in Pakistan believes that you are behind this. So as a policy prescription that we should have the capacities, it's nice to say so, but to be realistic, what further effect will it have is something we have to think through. But I didn't mean, Sashi, that we sit on our hands and do nothing, because I think the point is, and this is very important, it's not as if things are getting worse. Things are getting better in some ways, regardless of government policy. You saw Hussain Haqqani just now. He could talk to you without a visa because technology. Technology is a big, big empowerer in India-Pakistan relations. You are in touch with your friends because you're on the email. You can see their movies because of YouTube. Even if movies were banned, which they are not anymore, people could see. Internet is a big enabler. So things are changing for the better, quite regardless of government policy. Secondly, if you look at it carefully, things are better now than they were probably 10 or 15 years ago. 10 or 15 years ago, things were better than they were 10 or 15 years before that. It's not as if we are static or at a plateau. Things are getting better, but it's very incremental. It's very slow. It's almost glacial. But on the question of what should we do, I think there's a great deal which we can do, and I don't disagree with any of your solutions. But I think we need to deflate our sense of our own capacities. As I said, Pakistan is a country of 200 million people. In the end, it's for them to define their idea of Pakistan. We can't do it for them.
Thank you, Shashiji. Thank you.
But there's just one small point that I want to add to this. You are right that from 2007 onwards, in most cases, most Pakistanis either believed or were taught to believe that India is responsible consistently for all the attacks that happen on their soil. But there is a difference. When those children died at the Northwest Frontier province, that I think was a turning point. If those editorials, when you look at the editorials written in the Dawn at that time and so on and so forth, there was a clear sort of scenario building in Pakistan where there's a realization that perhaps not every attack that happens on Pakistani soil is done by Indians. And I think that is one realization where, I credit Nawaz Sharif's government for that, because I think that's a government which has really taken this fact into cognizance, and many of the things that they're trying to push is based on this idea that there's realization that all attacks that happen on Pakistani soil are not done by Pakistanis. Many of the attacks that happen on Pakistani soil are actually done by people from Pakistan, within Pakistan, trained in Pakistan. So I think that inflection point is certainly something that we as journalists who track Pakistan notice. That in the civil society and in their media, there is an inflection point. That people now believe that something has changed. Don't you think that is a reason for hope that something might be changing in that society?
Ambassador, would you like to respond to that?
Well, I agree with you. Things are changing in Pakistan. Pakistan society, like society in India, is in the process of changing. But the question is of evaluating how much change has occurred, what is the mainstream direction of change, and so on. And while it is true that there have been inflection points, such as the school children being killed in Peshawar, but there have been many other inflection points in the past where we thought a change was going to come. For instance, Benazir Bhutto being killed. But in fact, it has not led to a change in the mindset of the national security state, which Neeraj Kumar Saab had referred to. And whether we are nearer that point of change, I don't know. Maybe we are, but we have to see. But I think to jump to the conclusion that a terrible tragedy has occurred and this is bound to change things, I would hesitate to do that, because in the past, this kind of linear thinking has not taken place in Pakistan.
Fantastic. The conversation is continuing, and I'm sure everyone is eager to join in. I'd like to open up the floor to some questions. I would just request you to raise your hand, and I will guide the mic to you, and you would please say your name out, what you do, and who the question is directed to. I think the first question I saw was that gentleman there in the blue and white checked shirt.
My name is Kamaljeet. I am a journalist, and the question is to Mr. Raghavan. And Mr. Neeraj Kumar can also answer, and others can also answer. It's simple, sir. Whenever we start talking, India starts talking to the civilian government in Pakistan, the incident happens. It is done by Pakistan Army, ISI, telling very straightforward and a simple way to India, hey, you are talking to idiots. Talk to us. They hold the power. Why? Why India can't talk to the Pakistan Army? Yes, it can. Okay, why? And if not, why? If you can answer that. Thank you.
Well, firstly, it's not the case as if attacks take place only when we are talking to the civilian government. Attacks have a certain randomness. For instance, the parliament attack didn't take place at a time when there was an upswing in India-Pakistan relations. If you recall, the Agra summit had failed. Things were not looking well at all. It was an attack which took place when it was a very bad situation. Now, yes, the Pathankot attack took place after the Prime Minister reached out to Mr. Nawaz Sharif. But earlier attacks, the Udhampur attack or the earlier attack before that in northern Kashmir, that was again random. There was no particular reason. It was not as if there was an upswing in our relationship at that time. If anything, things were at a plateau. But come to your question of why don't we talk to the Pakistan army? You see, the nature of the Pakistan state is different from the nature of the Indian state. Let me give you a simple example. I was talking to my colleagues earlier. If you see the last 20 years, there have been 3 army chiefs in Pakistan. Pervez Musharraf, General Kayani, and now Rahil Sharif. I don't think any of us can count the number of army chiefs we've had in the last 20 years. It's totally a different kind of state. Now, can you talk to the Pakistan army? What would be the means by which you would do so? And is talking itself going to solve everything? I think in the end, you see, policies are more than just talking. And policies work in somewhat inanimate ways, in subterranean ways, and also impersonally. I don't think talking to the Pakistan army itself will solve problems because there are fundamental issues which divide India and Pakistan. Just talking is not going to resolve them. The only way which will resolve them is that if you can contextualize your relationship, do the kind of things which Hindol and Sashi mentioned, and hope that in Pakistan itself, in the internal dynamics of Pakistan, the role of the security establishment reduces to some extent.
Hello. Sir,
Moving on to the next question.
Yes, sir. Sir, thanks for giving me the opportunity, sir. My name is Sanjay Chopra, and I'm a member of Swaraj Abhiyan, sir. Sir, few days back, Professor Nivedita Menon of JNU, she raised a question against Indian military. And she says that Indian government has illegally occupied Kashmir and Manipur. And what you have to say, the human rights issue within the Kashmir and Manipur, sir. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I can't give you an authoritative answer, and because I've never dealt with Kashmir affairs professionally, I can only give you an answer based on whatever I have read in newspapers and some of the books that I've been through. Now, human rights violations in Kashmir. Now we'll have to. We can't generalize human rights situation in Kashmir, under one umbrella, or we cannot say human rights are always kind of violated. You will have to talk from case to case. Yes, our army, there have been allegations that, they have indulged in atrocities on common people. There are instances when people who have been picked up for interrogation, they have been tortured and so on and so forth. But it is not as if that is the order of the day in Kashmir. That is all propaganda. It is propaganda that human rights are violated in Kashmir at the drop of a hat.
And sir, Manipur too also, sir. Nirupama Devi, 2006, she was raped by the Assam Rifles. And 1994, sir, 35 Kashmiri women raped by Rajput Rifles of Indian military. What do you have to say about it, if you don't mind?
No.
The Hindu exposure.
No. Yeah, we are only discussing. See, these incidents, just like the terror attacks I mentioned, these will happen. And it is not as if they happen every day. Such aberrations will happen. And we have to live by them. And we have to respond to each one of them in our own way. And respond in a way that is demonstrative of our basic intentions, that we stand for human rights, we stand for the rights of the people, and it is we stand by for the cause that we must succeed in governing ourselves and making a success of it.
I just want to come in one point. I keep hearing lots of things about Kashmir, and I don't want to go into who commented what, but just as a journalist, I can just talk like as a journalist. Yeah, one sec. You've asked your question. Let me please answer. Just one moment, right? Kashmir. Let's talk about Kashmir, right? No one denies that at one point in the battle that India fought against terrorists in Kashmir, in the violence that occurred in Kashmir, there were atrocities, there were human rights atrocities. Nobody sensible would deny that. Nobody. There was a period of time when this happened, certain incidences took place, and it happened, and subsequently there were many other things that happened in Kashmir. The Kashmiri Pandits were thrown out of the valley. All sorts of things have happened. There was a very violent period of Kashmir. However, we have to look at that place holistically. Another place I keep going to almost every few months. Do you know, in Fortune 500, Fortune is the magazine I work for, right? Do you know the Jammu and Kashmir Bank is a Fortune 500 company? Does any mainstream media or anybody talk about that? Do you know it's a bank run by Kashmiris, managed by Kashmiris? The customers are Kashmiris. Every single person is a Kashmiri. Do you know managers of the Jammu and Kashmir Bank fought till they were there when their main Srinagar headquarters were attacked by terrorists? Jammu and Kashmir Bank managers who were Kashmiris stayed in the bank, risking their own life to save the records of their bank. Nobody talks about this. We have a one-sided story that is told about mainstream media. This is all documented fact. You don't take my word for it. Please go and look at the history of Jammu and Kashmir Bank. Just one more thing before I end. Kashmir is seeing a resurgence of normalcy, and Kashmir is seeing a resurgence of entrepreneurship at the grassroots level. There's an organization called JKEDI which has been working tirelessly, irrespective of which government, whether it's Omar Abdullah or whoever it is, whoever's been in power, it has been working tirelessly to breed new entrepreneurs at the grassroots level. Very poor Kashmiris made into entrepreneurs. Do you know the latest attack in Kashmir by the terrorists has been on JKEDI? Why do they hate JKEDI? Why are terrorists attacking one entrepreneurship council? Why are they not attacking, an army outpost or the government's outpost? They're attacking that entrepreneurship council because that's where peace will come from. And there are vested interests in Kashmir who don't want peace to come. Do you know, you ask most Kashmiris in Kashmir, they will tell you that the prime minister that they like the most is Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Why? Because Atal Bihari Vajpayee was trying desperately to bring the peace that vested interests in Kashmir and in Pakistan and in India will not let happen. So please, let's look at it holistically. Nobody denies, and I just want to put on record, I do not like the fact that horrible law is still there, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. But I also see it holistically. I am not for continuing the Armed Forces Special Powers Act in any part of India. It's not a normal situation in democracy. But please understand, we go through abnormal situations, we fight battles, we fight as a nation, and we have to look at these things holistically.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question now.
My name is Akshata and I'm a blogger. So my question is a bit, I want to quote an example from history. It's from Sen Gupta and Shashi sir. So, yeah, he's missing. So you will answer that. So, my question is, example is that during World War I, German merchant ships has their insurance done by British government. When British and Germany entered in war, they fight each other head on, irrespective of the insurance money that British had to pay. My question is that regarding the things that you both said, that trade can bring peace. My point is that when people are bent on war, when people are bent on that they want to destroy you, irrespective of economic loss, irrespective of trade, people will do it. What's your take on that?
There is only, our civilizational context has only taught us one response to that. At that moment, you protect the dharma and you fight.
Okay, moving on to the next question, gentleman there.
My question is addressed to the ambassador who worked in Pakistan. Any perception of Pakistan, we cannot ignore a recent development, and that is China trying to build an economic corridor linking POK areas with Xinjiang province in China, and then trying to enter into trade relationships which are bordering the sensitive area of Kashmir. Do you not perceive this as a threat to India?
Well, as I said, this is not a new factor. The Karakoram Highway was inaugurated in 1979. So the quote-unquote China-Pakistan axis is not something which we have come to deal with only now. It's a factor which has been there for many years. Yes, I think what the Chinese are trying to do is to develop the infrastructure in Pakistan, because that is the only way they have in their own experience of dealing with a situation of extremism and militancy. This is what they've done in their own country, and certainly they see Pakistan in overall strategic terms and are trying to develop infrastructure through the corridors you mentioned and so on. But I think we need to take a more broader view of this, widen the context. We ourselves are developing a very important relationship with China. If you see what we are doing with China on our east through the Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar corridor into the Bay of Bengal, it shows that there are different ways of looking at the role of China in Asia rather than simply as a zero-sum game. But I won't deny the factor that there is a certain strategic move implied in these Chinese moves. That is something which has to be kept in mind all the time.
Good evening to all.
Moving on to the next question. Sorry, we just take hers and then we'll come to yours.
My question is for Taslima Nasreen. I'm Dr. Monica Chansori. I'm a writer and a strategic analyst. What, according to you, is the role of the state, directly or indirectly, in ensuring gender parity, gender identity, not just in Bangladesh, but in South Asia? And according to you, is there a model country which reflects on how gender parity and gender equality needs to be ensured not just by the civil society, but by the state at large? Thank you.
I don't think that any country is really a model country, but I should say Sweden is a country where women get most equality. So in our South Asia, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan and other countries have laws based on religion. If you have laws based on religion, then women would not have equality. So even though in India, for Hindus, they have Hindu Act, which was created in 1956, women get equality. But Bangladesh, Pakistan, and other Muslim countries still have religious laws. And, there is no equality between men and women under any religious laws. When Hindus didn't have Hindu Act based on equality, Hindu women suffered a lot. Hindu women could not get father's property equality to their brothers, equally with their brothers. And also, and there is no equality in marriage, divorce, and child custody. Hindu women didn't have any rights to divorce their husband. Hindu men could marry as many women as possible, could have as many wives they wanted. In Bangladesh, for Hindus, there is no modern law. They still follow their old Shastra, where Hindu women do not have any rights. In Pakistan also, Hindu women do not have any rights because they follow their old scriptures. And in India, Muslim women do not have any rights because Muslims are having Quranic law, Sharia law, which discriminates against women. So we should have uniform civil code based on equality. Because, all religions are against women. So if you have religious laws, women would not have equality. This is final. So if you want gender parity, you must remove religious laws. You must have laws based on equality between men and women.
Thank you.
Good evening to all.
To the next question there.
Good evening. Being representative of government as High Commissioner and being journalist, just want to ask question about situation of human rights in Balochistan, because that's part of a world that's often get ignored by media. And as society, what India should do to raise voice if there is human right abuse in that region? to both of you, sir.
What should India do about Balochistan? I think that's the question. I don't think there's very much India can do about Balochistan. It's a part of Pakistan. It's something which they have to deal with themselves. And that is the answer you'll always get whenever you ask someone about anything about Balochistan. There is this feeling, I mean, I think this is what you're perhaps alluding to. There is this feeling that just like Pakistan is fermenting trouble in India, we should use Balochistan and foment trouble in Pakistan. Is that the intent of your question? You see, as I said, you can do these things, but you have to see what are the precise effects it will have. As I mentioned earlier, whether you're doing something or not, virtually everyone in Pakistan believes that whatever is happening in Balochistan, the insurgency over there, is because of your actions. Now,
I'm not asking as a part of government what government of India should do. As civil society, journalists and people of India can do as a humanitarian ground, not on exactly political.
I don't think there's anything you can do, because if the people of Pakistan can't do anything about what is happening in Balochistan, what on earth can journalists in India do about it?
Moving on to platforms to Tariq Fatah to talk in India.
Moving on to the next question this side.
Hi all, good evening. My question is to the esteemed panelists sitting there. What is your take on Pakistani food place? I mean the beautiful Pakistani food, delicious Pakistani food, beautiful Pakistani places, the landscape, the drama, the films, the serials. What's your take on that? Thank you.
Hindal, would you like to take that?
Well, only because I've written a lot about this in The Hindu, about the wonderful food, the wonderful clothes, the lawn fabric. Well, I have the same response to wonderful fabric and food and friendship and TV serials in Pakistan as I do about, wonderful food from Afghanistan and wonderful food from Iraq and wonderful food from any, troubled place in the world. Sure, all of that is wonderful. I mean, who's to deny that Pakistani music is wonderful? One of my dear friends is Zeeb Bangash in Pakistan, who's a beautiful singer. Zeeb and Hania is a very popular band, and she now sings alone. But of course, I mean, all of those things are there and they're wonderful and they're beautiful and they should be treasured and we should encourage them and we should have them over and our artists should go there. I mean, that's not denying. I mean, I don't think any of the conversation that we've had today denies the wonderful cultural linkages that India and Pakistan has and ought to continue to have in the future. That is a given. But keeping all that in mind, there are other questions, there are broader national questions that need to be addressed. So yes, I mean, to your question, do they have wonderful food? Yes. Do they have wonderful clothes? Yes. Do they have wonderful TV serials? Yes. But, I mean, sure, but what are we going to do about that? I mean, enjoy it.
Next question here, the girl here.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, sir. I am myself Bhavna Chaudhary and I am a law student from Indian Law Institute. My question is to Neeraj sir and Raghavan sir. So you have been talking about attacks and the stand of Pakistan on that mostly Pakistani army or Pakistani insurgents are involved in these attacks. Now, isn't it a failure on the part of Indian government that these people are coming in our country, that to places like Red Fort or Taj in Mumbai, being such a populous and such a protected areas itself? So isn't it a failure of our government itself?
Well, I'll let Neeraj Kumar Saab do the answering of your question. But what I want to say is that, and this is something very difficult to swallow, so I understand your question. But you cannot cut yourself off from what is happening in Pakistan. Just like Pakistan cannot cut itself off from what is happening in Afghanistan. Or for that matter, Turkey cannot cut itself off from what is happening in Iraq. If there is such a huge domestic ferment in Pakistan, where there's so many militant groups, many of whom have links with their government or with their state agencies, many of those groups have no links at all. They exist on their own, they raise their own funds, or they get funds from a whole variety of sources. If this is happening in your neighborhood, there is no way you can protect yourself 100%. You can try to increase your defenses, you can do more to improve your national security apparatus, but the hard fact is that if your neighborhood is in in a situation where these things are happening, there is no way you can cut yourself off from it.
So here my
One
question
sec.
is to
One
Ambassador.
sec. I'll take Ambassador Raghavan's argument a little further. We all feel that, well, US is very safe. But what could they do about the attack on 9/11? You see, we all thought France security systems are excellent. But yet, Paris happened. You know, we all thought Australia terrorists would never reach. But terror attacks have happened. So there would be attacks. It may not always be a reflection on failure of our security. But you plug one place and they will come up with a new plan, and they will come up with you fence the border, you increase surveillance on the land border, and suddenly they decide to come by sea. Now you cover the sea by strengthening the coast guard and so on and so forth. They will, as I said, they might come in by air. So, you try to plug one place and there is always an opening at the other. So that is to put things in perspective.
So the question being that...
Sorry, I think we're out of time. I'll have to cut that off at there. And I must now, I see a lot of hands, but I must do something that might make me the most hated person of the evening, but we're really out of time. And I'd like to invite Udayan to give the vote of thanks.